It's 2:30 in the morning and you cannot sleep. You roll from one side to the other. You pound your pillow. Nothing helps. Everyone else sleeps, but not you. And so it's 2:30 in the morning, it becomes 3:30, and you still haven't slept. And anxiety begins to have its way with you. Another hour passes. You cover your head with a pillow. You feel like crying. What a mess. What does all this anxiety mean? All this insecurity, all this trepidation, all this worry, all this restlessness. What does it mean? Well, it means simply this. You are a human being. You're not stupid. You're not emotionally underdeveloped. You're not immature. Your parents didn't fail you. It doesn't mean you failed them. And this is important. It does not mean you're not a Christian. Christians battle anxiety. Jesus did. In the Garden of Gethsemane on the night before his crucifixion, he prayed for the cup of suffering to be taken away from him. And he prayed with such ferocity that the capillaries burst and rivulets of crimson rolled down his face. Jesus battled anxiety. He faced fears, but he fought through his fears and surrendered them to God and fulfilled his mission. And anxiety did not win. And such is God's plan for you. Anxiety comes with life, but it doesn't have to dominate your life. God's plan for you is not a life that is drenched in anxiety. It is his will that you and I learn to live a life that is characterized by calm and not chaos, by peace and not panic.
You ever felt nearly swamped in your life? Like, I'm still showing up, but barely. I'm making it and I'm smiling, but nobody knows what's really behind this smile. The things I think about, some days I just want to run away from it all. I want to suggest something to you today about the storms of anxiety in your life and the waves and the winds that are blowing in your life. Because, man, the winds will blow. They will blow. Absolutely. And the waves will break and they will crash. No doubt about it. There are some things that you're afraid of that make no sense from heaven's perspective. There are some things that are causing you to shut down. They're paralyzing you that are senseless when you put it in the context of who God is in you and what you mean to him. And he says, I want you to train your heart to be anxious for nothing.
Can somebody really live a life in which they're anxious for nothing? Do not let yourself be caught in a state of perpetual anxiety. That's what he's saying. It's impossible to lead a life free of anxiety, but we can discover a life that is void of perpetual anxiety. Anxiety comes with life, but it does not have to dominate our lives.
You see, anxiety, depression, and unhappiness, they all come from a sense of powerlessness. They all come from a sense of powerlessness. So when you're powerless, you feel anxious. When you're powerless, you feel depressed. When you're powerless, you feel unhappy. So the idea that you're powerless over your debts, powerless over the sentence, powerless over the battle, that somehow it's up to you to try to make it happen, that will bring you sadness. It will bring you anxiety. It will bring you, so we only get anxious about something because we're not certain about what the outcome is going to be. Why would you be anxious about something you're sure about? Well, the outcome of whatever your need is my God shall supply it. So when you know the outcome, anxiety leaves you.
There's a pathway out of the valley of fret, and God has used the Apostle Paul to sketch the map. in this passage from Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 through 8. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your gentleness be made known to all men. The Lord is at hand. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. A person would be hard-pressed to find a passage more practical and applicable to our day and age. Wouldn't you agree? So what can we do? Paul lists here 4 helpful ideas for winning the war on worry. And if you want to move from chaos into calm, consider what Paul says. First, celebrate God's goodness. Rejoice in the Lord always, the apostle writes, with chains dangling from that Roman jail cell. Rejoice in the Lord always, he writes, with no penny in his pocket. His point is, don't meditate on the mess. The more you stare at the problem, the bigger it gets. The more you stare at the problem, the bigger it gets. So when you have a problem, lift up your eyes and rejoice in the Lord. The minute the anxiety comes, rather than giving in to the anxiety, you lift up your eyes and you rejoice in the Lord. This was the counsel of the psalmist. He said, I will lift up my eyes to the hills. From whence comes my help? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. Do you see the intentionality in those words? I will lift up my eyes. This was a decision that the psalmist made. The Apostle Peter is a testimony to this. You remember how when the storm struck the Sea of Galilee, he knew what 10-foot waves could do to a fishing boat. And Peter cried out, Lord, if it's really you, then command me to come to you on the water. And Jesus said, come. And Peter left the boat and walked on the water to Jesus. But when Peter saw the wind and the waves, he became afraid. And he began to, what? Sink. As long as he kept his eyes on Christ, he was able to do the impossible. But when he saw the wind and the waves, when he turned his gaze away from Christ, he began to sink. If today you feel like you're sinking, lift up your eyes. Set your gaze on Christ.